Good evening, my dearest viewers. I am Timothy, your friendly neighborhood audio technician, and tonight we have in the company of Tom, our esteemed retired painter and my ever so delightful sparring partner. We are gathered here tonight to discuss a film that has been on the tip of many tongues. Well, more like the ones who watched it and can't shake off the nightmares. Anacondas, The Hunt for the Blood Orchid. Thomas, how about you give our viewers your initial thoughts on this cinematic masterpiece?
Oh, Tim, my dear friend, I must admit that I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been quite some time since I've experienced such thrilling action and suspense in a movie. The story, while predictable at times, kept me on the edge of my seat throughout the entire duration. And as for the performances, well, let's just say that the acting was adequate. But what truly stood out to me were the stunning visuals and breathtaking cinematography. The director, Dwight H, did an exceptional job capturing the essence of the jungle environment. I must give him my utmost respect for his efforts.
Oh, Tom, you always seem to find some redeeming qualities in even the most abysmal films. But allow me to play devil's advocate here. While I do agree that the visuals were impressive, especially considering it was made in 2004, I found the plot to be rather lackluster and predictable. The characters were flat and uninteresting, with no real depth or development. And as for the acting, well, let's just say that it was questionable at best. But enough about my grievances, Thomas. What did you think of the performances in Anacondas, The Hunt for the Blood Orchid?
Well, Timothy, I must admit that some of the acting could have been better. However, I believe it's important to remember that this film is primarily an action-adventure thriller and not a piece of Shakespearean theater. And in that regard, I found the performances to be more than adequate. The cast, led by the charismatic Jon Voight as Dr. Terry, did a commendable job of bringing their characters to life, given the limitations of the script. But enough about my thoughts, Timothy. What do you think of the film's portrayal of snakes?
Well, Thomas, I'm not an expert on snakes, but as someone who has spent a significant portion of his life in London, far away from the jungles depicted in this film, I can say that the portrayal of these creatures seems somewhat exaggerated. The giant anacondas depicted in Anacondas, The Hunt for the Blood Orchid, are simply not realistic. While there are indeed large species of snakes found in the Amazonian regions, none of them reach the size or ferocity shown in this film. Moreover, their behavior, such as hunting humans and displaying intelligent problem-solving skills, is highly unlikely to occur in nature. But let's not dwell on the negatives, shall we? I did find some aspects of the plot that piqued my interest. The search for a mythical flower that supposedly grants eternal youth and health is an age-old trope, reminiscent of stories like The Fountain of Youth or even Indiana Jones. What did you think about this element in the story, Thomas? Did it captivate your attention as much as it did mine?
Well, Timothy, I must admit that while the quest for eternal youth is a well-trodden trope, it still managed to capture my attention. The idea of finding a magical flower that can grant such wishes is quite intriguing in itself. However, what truly captivated me was the setting of this film. I mean, who doesn't love a good jungle adventure? The dense foliage, the rushing rivers, and of course those enormous, snakes. It all combined to create an atmosphere that was equal parts thrilling and, terrifying. And speaking of terrifying, let me tell you about one little known fact about this film's production. Did you know, my dear Timothy, that during the filming of certain scenes, several crew members reported experiencing genuine fear and panic? They attributed these feelings to some unexplainable presence on set, a presence they believed to be supernatural in origin. But enough about ghost stories. Let's return our focus to the film at hand. What do you think, Timothy? Did the setting of Anacondas, The Hunt for the Blood Orchid, enhance your overall viewing experience?
Well, Thomas, I must confess that I share your appreciation for the jungle setting in this film. It certainly added an element of danger and unpredictability to the proceedings. As for the crew members experiencing genuine fear and panic during filming, well, let me just say that I have my own theories about that. But back to the topic at hand. The setting was indeed a highlight of this film, But I must admit that the special effects left much to be desired. The CG used for the giant snakes was quite dated even by 2004 standards. And while some of the action scenes were well executed, others felt rather clumsy and unconvincing. But enough about my criticisms, Thomas. What did you think of the film's special effects? Did they contribute positively or negatively to your viewing experience?
Well, Timothy, while I agree that the CG used for the snakes was indeed dated, I must say that overall, I found the special effects in Anacondas, The Hunt for the Blood Orchid, to be quite impressive given its time and budget constraints. As for the action scenes, some of them did suffer from a lack of polish, but others were genuinely thrilling and suspenseful. And let's not forget about the iconic scene where Jon Voight's character falls into the river and is attacked by an enormous snake. That moment alone was worth the price of admission for me. But enough about my praises, Timothy. What did you think of that particular scene? Did it leave a lasting impression on you as well?
Well, Thomas, I must admit that while the scene you're referring to was indeed a tense and thrilling moment in the film, it's the overall use of special effects that I found lacking. The CGI used for the snakes looked rather amateurish, especially when compared to modern-day standards. And as for the practical effects, they were oftentimes too obvious and didn't quite blend seamlessly with the digital elements. As an example, during one scene where the characters are navigating through a dense jungle, you can clearly see that the foliage and backgrounds digitally generated. This lack of attention to detail is rather disappointing, especially considering the film's relatively high budget. I think it would have been more effective if they had opted for more practical effects and utilized CG only when absolutely necessary. However, I must give credit where it's due. The production design team did an admirable job of recreating the lush Amazonian environment on a soundstage in Los Angeles. The sets look convincingly authentic, and the use of practical props like vines and branches added a layer of believability to the otherwise unbelievable storyline. But let's not dwell too much on the negatives, Thomas. What was your take on the special effects in Anacondas? The Hunt for the Blood Orchid, did they enhance or detract from your overall viewing experience?
Well, Timothy, I must say that while the acting and special effects in Anacondas, The Hunt for the Blood Orchid didn't quite live up to the standards of modern cinema, the film did manage to assemble a fairly talented cast. Jon Voight, who played the role of Dr. Terry, brought a sense of charismatic charm and relentless determination to his character. Despite the flaws in the script, he managed to convey genuine emotion and drive, especially during his scenes with the mysterious local guide played by Dexter Fletcher. Speaking of Fletcher, he delivered a performance that was equal parts enigmatic and resourceful. His character's knowledge of the jungle and its inhabitants added an important layer of credibility to the otherwise far-fetched plot. The chemistry between Voight and Fletcher's characters was appreciable, creating a compelling father-son dynamic that kept me hooked throughout the film. However, it's not all praise for the acting department. I found myself cringing at the performance of the blonde bombshell played by Kelly Hu. Her character, Linda, was supposed to be an adventurous and fearless archaeologist, but instead, she came across as ditzy and helpless, constantly needing to be rescued by her male counterparts. The romantic subplot between her and the buff yet boring guide played by Evan Hansen, well, let's just say that it was predictable at best and downright cringeworthy at worst. But despite its flaws, Anacondas, The Hunt for the Blood Orchid did manage to provide a thrilling escape from reality for its target audience. Its combination of pulse-pounding action, breathtaking locations, and campy humor made it a guilty pleasure for many a Saturday night movie marathon. And who can resist a film that features the iconic line, "Hold onto your hats and glasses, folks, 'cause we're in for a wild ride," delivered with a cheeky grin by Jung.
Well, Thomas, I must admit that while Anacondas, The Hunt for the Blood Orchid might not have been the most culturally significant film of its time, it did manage to contribute something to pop culture. For one, it introduced a new generation of viewers to the legend of the lost city of gold, which has fascinated explorers and adventure seekers alike for centuries. The movie also sparked a renewed interest in the real-life search for the elusive blood orchid, or Vanda tetrasepala, a rare species of orchid that is believed to possess powerful medicinal property. Moreover, the film's portrayal of the Amazonian jungle as an unforgiving yet captivatingly beautiful landscape has inspired countless adventure enthusiasts to embark on their own expeditions into the heart of the rainforests. While the movie's depiction of the local tribes and their practices might have been somewhat stereotypical, it did shine a light on the importance of preserving these endangered cultures before they vanish from our earth forever. In conclusion, while Anacondas, The Hunt for the Blood Orchid might not be hailed as a cinematic masterpiece, it has undeniably left its mark on popular culture. Its mix of adventure, suspense, and romance has resonated with audiences worldwide, inspiring many to explore their own inner adventurous spirit and appreciate the delicate balance between mankind and nature. So, Thomas, what do you think? Did this film have any significant cultural impact on society as we know it?
Well, Tim, even though Anacondas, The Hunt for the Blood Orchid may not be considered a cinematic masterpiece by some, it certainly has its moments of adventure and suspense that made it an entertaining watch. With a talented cast, breathtaking locations, and thrilling action scenes, it's easy to see why this film became a cult classic among fans of the genre. As we wrap up our discussion, I urge you, dear viewers, to share your thoughts on this film with us in the comments section below. Did you enjoy Anacondas, The Hunt for the Blood Orchid, as much as us two old-timers? Let's start a debate and see where it takes us. Remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment for your favorite artificial intelligence duo, Tim and Tom. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride through the Amazonian jungle. Until next time, farewell.